disappointment. Disappointment. This gets to be really personal. So, no,
You're gonna break the plane.
I'm not going to go there.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh. What was the first time I realized I couldn't trust my parents? Well, this was something that grew on me gradually. It wasn't like a first time kind of thing, but there was a sense of alienation I had from my parents during my teenage years. Something was wrong. I would have angry outbursts. I must have been like slightly insane actually when I was an adolescent. I would have angry outbursts. Whew. I had an angry outburst. I was lonely. I was struggling with something. I was struggling with something, I guess. So, anyway, I used to talk to my mother pretty freely, but with my father there was a distance, and I thought he didn't really like me. I thought he liked my brother Dan, but I didn't think he didn't trust me. And I think one reason was that, see, he was the younger brother, and his father was an engineer. And he was an artist and struggled to be an artist, sort of unsuccessfully, like most people who struggle to be an artist. And he kind of had a lot of animus about his family. And then I came along, and it turned out I was said to be good at math. It came easily to me, you know. So when I was in school, I would get into it, and I would read these books and stuff like that. And I think it freaked him out. And I didn't I didn't want to paint or be an artist or anything like that. And then when I went away to school and I started having other experiences with my emotional relationship to culture, which I realized I could control on the basis of my experience with Bartok and John Cage, I sort of began to realize that the kind of values, the kind of grounding, the absolute values in the seriousness and intensity of attachment to values that my father was involved with in his looking for something in art was just wrong. And he finally, after I made my film The Flicker, he warned me at a certain point about modern art, about the way that modern art made it possible to lose your integrity. And, in a kind of weird reciprocal way that things always work, the fact that I knew that somehow he finally couldn't fully trust me was a way in which I realized I couldn't really trust him. Yeah, exactly. But on the other side of it, my parents were very sincere people. And I owe that a lot to them. You know, today I was watching C-SPAN. Okay. Howard Dean was on. He was addressing a throng of Democrats, and he was telling them in the end a story about a woman who came to him, you know, like in the course of his campaign, and she was a fundamentalist Christian, and he finally asked her why she was there with him when they had so many things to disagree about. And it turned out she was there with him because finally he believed in what he was doing and was unafraid to actually stand up for that. In other words, he had integrity, you know, and whatever else, my parents had integrity. And I think that Howard Dean made a good point, that he was trying to say, we Democrats, we've got integrity on certain issues. Now everybody knows that Democrats, you know, cheat and lie and you know, like take bribes and everything else as much as the next people. But the party at some level does aim to have some kind of social principles behind it. It seems. Yeah, so, yeah, that kind of thing. You know, a sincerity. There was a sincerity there, a certain, like, just a kind of naive, innocent sincerity. It was hard to cast aside. I'm not doing too well with these. Let's see.
Are you kidding me?
Let's look at another one.
You're doing fantastic.
What's-
I am like so like transfixed on your presentation. It's terrific.
Oh, I know why you're saying that.
Why?
You told me beforehand. You always have to say nice things about everybody who performs. Ha ha. I want more fruit. I did have a girlfriend when I was in high school, and a few years, not that long ago, I got this, like 5 years ago. That's not long ago. Maybe a little bit longer than that. But around that time, about 5 years ago, I got this email from Barbara Partee. And she said that, and she's a linguist, and she said she went to a conference because she's now quite distinguished professor in this area. She said she went to this conference and she had met this Russian linguist. Russian was her specialty. And they had fallen in love, and they had fallen in love, and she, being like in her late 50s, she left her husband and her 3 kids. Must have been grown up almost, or by then, but anyway, she left her family and took off and lived with this guy, and they spend now half the year in Moscow and half the year in Amherst, Mass, where she teaches up there. And she was writing to tell me something that really was pretty impressive, I thought, that they were so in love that it reminded her of nothing else in her life other than the kind of love that we had shared in high school and the letters that we had written back and forth to each other. And that was such an incredibly, exquisitely weird experience to have that kind of flash in the face from this woman who I hadn't seen, like for decades now. It made me go back and get those letters out and see, because I keep everything. So I found all these letters, and I looked at some of them, and they're like, like adolescent letters, but we had a very hot relationship, even though it was like the amount of actual painfully explicit sex involved was like nothing. There might have been a little like fondling of some part of the body or something like that, but that's as far as that ever got. And a lot of kissing and loving. But a lot of real loving went down. It was a very intimate and wonderful, hot relationship that we had. Well, I remember one time she was like such a straight arrow girl. It was amazing. She was a Girl Scout. Yep, a Girl Scout, and her athletic, brilliant. Just one of those perfect people, drive you crazy. Woo. Her brother was a pitcher on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Yeah, we went to a ball game. Later, he pitched in the World Series for Baltimore. Had a great decal. He was the only guy on the team who had a master's degree. Because he was brilliant, too. His area was taxation. Jeez. They were weird. They didn't, so I don't know what the family was. Her mother had majored in home ec. She was very brilliant, but, just like nice. They were nice. So what I'm getting to here is the day when Barbara invited me and like a couple of us guys went along on the Girl Scout camping trip we went down to, there's a place, there used to be a book called Misty of Chincoteague, which was a big children's book about horses, because there's these wild horses that live on the coastal islands off the coast of Maryland. Assateague, Chincoteague, those islands, and they're very romantic, wild places. So we went to Assateague Island and went and camped there. And I camped with my pal Hans Jordan. His family had come from Germany, and we had a little tent that I think belonged to Hans because I didn't have a tent. And the problem was Assateague Island was extremely sunny. And I got completely lobster cooked, and my whole body started to turn into mush. You know how it gets before it crusts over? And then in the middle of the night, I woke up, and there, just above me, about as far as this microphone here, just that distance above me on the ceiling of the tent was a carpet of mosquitoes. Just a carpet of mosquitoes lying there waiting for me. And they were biting and of my body. This was one of the worst nights of my life. It was actually, I guess this would have been a good thing to do down in Guantanamo or something. They could have just put people outside with mosquito netting inside out or something. It was torture. It was horrifying. This was one of the worst experiences of my life, of my young life, was in 110 degree heat in the middle of the night in a tent with a baked skin, just boiling with scabs and sores and so forth, all covered with mosquitoes. Oh! This is a random sort of recall of a of a night that's evoked by the stimulus sleeping outside with your friends. I didn't even have any thought that I should be sleeping with the girls. I was too nerdy. I already was saying about my aesthetic development, and I wrote about this recently in a little piece in the Wire magazine. There's this great epiphany that happened in my life that changed everything for me. It had to do with a little segment out of a string quartet by Bartók. And I had, when I was a lonely adolescent, and a lot of this is focusing on that period, isn't it? I know it's focusing on this sad period. I should play a little song for that period of my life, maybe on my little instrument. My sad and lonely adolescence. All I had was my violin at the time. I had a really suddenly a fantastic involvement with, Tchaikovsky and Brahms and romantic music of the late 19th century, actually, or mid 19th century, and just like when I was a teenager, I got so turned on by it was the only music in the house because my father had these old 78s. You know, like boom, and this just like, you know, Brahms' Fourth Symphony, like that last movement, you know, like boom. Jump. Yeah, these things just took me right over the top. I couldn't even imagine how people could conceive and bring into being such incredibly transcendent sounds. And, you know, then we would go down to, because we had these rather affluent friends and cultivated friends out in the country, ironically, as it happened, the neighbor family, the neighbors that I grew up with, you know, like the kids that I grew up with, my best friend and his family, their father was a Nobel Prize winner later on. And I mean, he was a scientist and, you know, like, so anyway, they took us to the museum to hear some real music be played. And we heard Bartók quartets played. And they were the most scurrilous and unbelievably hideous music I'd ever heard. My violin teacher said, oh, we were playing these Bartók quartets. I said, why would you play something written by somebody who was trying deliberately to make something ugly? not realizing that that was a very good idea in itself. Probably quite beyond bar talk. But anyway, then when I went to college, I met this friend, Henry Flint, who tried to tell me that bar talk was good. And I knew bar talk sucked, so this was hopeless. Oh no, but Henry was insistent, as he still is. Just talked to him yesterday. He could prove it. And he showed me, just like in Bach, who again I didn't really care for, Bach, just like in Bach, there were arch structures. There was arch structure in the quartet. An architecture that it was a masterpiece. It was so built so carefully, so precisely, so with such listen, the guy had such passion about it. I thought I better, at least buy this important record. So I actually spent money and bought the bar talk record. If it was going to be like this important thing, I bought it. And so I would dutifully play it from time to time. Play the bar talk record. And then I had this epiphany. One day I was walking in the yard at the college, and you know how there's a tune in your head that suddenly comes on? You get this tune in your head. This came on in my head. It was not a tune. It was a weird, gorgeous, strange, cascading tone. Boom, boom. I could hear it. I couldn't reproduce it exactly any more than I can now, but it just like bent me. I couldn't place it anywhere. I had no idea where such a sound could possibly have come from. It just captured me, but nothing to do about it. And then, to my astonishment, the next time I played the bar talk, all of a sudden, there it was, in the bar talk. That very sound. I couldn't believe it. I went back, took the needle off and put it back and played it again. And it did that beautiful thing in the bar talk. See, this was a moment that was convincing to me that my tastes could somehow shift 180 degrees. Like my passion, my inner passion, not just my thinking like, oh yes, I think that would be a good idea, but no, some like inner, real deep, charged emotional thing could turn around and refocus on something else. Now, it wasn't so much that I suddenly started to hate Tchaikovsky, although, it became considerably more boring after one chunk after another of the bar talk turned out to be a gold mine of goodies and wonderful, wonderful moments, until I was kind of, really boring my roommates by just really overdoing it, playing the bar talk quartets at extreme high velocity all the time. But this inversion of taste was something that prepared me so that when I actually went to a talk given by John Cage and David Tudor, and John Cage says, well, the way he composes his music is he doesn't care what the notes are. He just throws like dice or sticks or something, makes them up any old way. And I thought, oh my God, it's up to us. This guy is on the same wavelength. He's discovered the same thing. What you have to do is prepare yourself for liking. So I would always, so I tried going to things I didn't like. I would go to things I didn't like, and I would say, okay, it's going to be really familiar. It's going to be really familiar. I'm going to really like it. And I would like jack myself up, you know, like with a lot of that energy you get when you're a teenager. And found that I could do it. It took an enormous amount of energy, but I could actually, contort my spirit around to an atmosphere of liking and absorb things that I hated. It started a program for me that I sort of adopted more or less consciously to try to, see if I couldn't actually expand what I liked. It wasn't a matter of not liking stuff. It was more of a matter of liking. There were things that I didn't like, like I didn't like rock and roll. Okay, so I tried to like rock and roll. I got really into rock and roll. And before you laugh, the time when I got into rock and roll was like around the very, very early years of the 60s. I'm talking when rock and roll was like Teen Angel and Ricky Nelson and that kind of stuff. I mean, like The Gypsy Cried, like really, these were things that were very hard to like. Yeah, I worked at that. The hardest for me was this area called easy listening. That took me a long time to get into. Finally mastered easy listening too. Yeah. You can do it. You can do it.
Can I take some photos of you?
Oh, let's stop for a minute because I want to go to the bathroom.